Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Margaret, or Margaret Corleone Blues, or MCB7280, and today we are going to be talking about my top 10 favorite TV shows of all time. Now, I like a lot of shows, and it's kind of harder for me to pick my top 10 favorite shows as opposed to favorite movies, because I feel like with a movie, you can just rewatch it whenever. But for me, with TV shows, it requires a little bit more time and effort to, like, binge something with, like, 5 seasons, like, 50 times. Whereas I could, like, watch The Blues Brothers every single day of my life and it not take a ton of time out of my day. And just, also, I'm just gonna say, this video will not be spoiler free. So if you have not watched one of these TV shows and you don't want spoilers, it's best to click out or fast forward. So for my 11th pick, it is a Netflix miniseries. It came out this past fall, and it came out around the same time as Squid Games. And I loved Squid Games. I watched it all in the whole day. It was just as good as everybody said it was, but I think it overshadowed this show a little bit. And that show was Midnight Mass. I remember seeing the trailers and I'm like, this looks really interesting. The trailer didn't really show much. It just basically showed that this new priest was coming to this little island town and that stuff was going to get crazy, but it didn't really reveal too much about the plot. This was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. When I finished watching it, I could not stop thinking about it for months. So, big major spoiler, this show is about vampires, and I absolutely loved that they did not spoil that in the trailer. There was nothing really that hinted about vampires. When I saw the priest, I thought it was going to be like possession, exorcist type thing, or like a cult. So I didn't suspect vampires. So the marketing of the show that barely showed any spoilers to make like the big twist that more exciting was awesome. And before this, I'd never heard of Hamish Linklater. I think that's how you say his name. But his performance as Father Paul was one of the best things I've ever seen in my entire life. And if he does not get nominated for an Emmy or win an Emmy, then I'm gonna sue the Television Academy, whoever it is. I'm just kidding. But Hamish Linklater's performance completely annihilates the show. Everybody on the show was amazing. I love the slow burn of the show and just how everything slowly builds up. I just loved all the characters, even though some of them were like so horrible. Like Bev was, I hate her so much, but also the ending was spectacular, and I feel like so many things should take risks like this. I just wish there were more things like Midnight Mass, because it felt like such good classic TV, and it just brought that like classic kind of vampire story back. But my favorite character was probably Father Paul, because Hamish Linklater's performance was just so killer, and his monologues and his performances with the homily were just insane. And my favorite scene was probably the church scene in the second to last episode, with the whole everybody drinking rat poison, and just I loved every scene of that show. It was really hard. Oh, and then the vampire shows up at the church. That whole like church massacre scene was like insane. And I don't really have like a specific order, so for this one I'm gonna say Stranger Things. The pacing for me of the show doesn't feel like you're watching individual episodes, but it feels like one long movie, so I feel like that adds to the bingeableness of it. I've watched the show I think at least 4 or 5 times. I just like everything. I love the characters. I feel like the actors are really what sell the show. I like the homages to the old movies. I love the music. I love the cinematography. It's such a fun and scary show, and every time I watch it, I always forget just how much I love it. Oh, and they reference Bluto in season 2. My man, and Steve's favorite movie is Animal House. So Steve and I would be besties. I feel like with TV shows, it's harder for me to pick a favorite scene because there's so many. Oh, all the scenes with Steve and Dustin are the best. That's what I'm gonna say. I also just like the ending of season 2. Just like all the ending stuff, like the snowball, and then when they're in like the tunnel that leads to the Upside Down, and then Eleven's closing the gate. Like the ending of season 2 was just so great for me. And my favorite characters, I don't have a number one favorite character. It's a tie between Hopper, Joyce, Steve, and Dustin. Okay, my next show is Whose Line Is It Anyway? I guess it's number 9. Am I on number 9? I think I'm on number 9. Okay. So I was obsessed with the show forever. I did improv in high school and I really liked it. But then in college, somebody that I was friends with at the time showed me Whose Line Is It Anyway? and I just got so super obsessed with it. Got me really back into improv, and I'm so excited because this Monday I'm starting my improv class with Second City. Oh my god. And like most of the cast are Second City alumni. I just love the show. I spent that entire summer after my friend showed it to me watching Whose Line. I would spend the entire day watching that show, and I did not want to choke to death. I would laugh so hard watching that show. I did not want to choke to death, and I would literally not eat for the entire day while I was watching that. So that happened. My favorite is the version with like Drew Carey. I liked the redo. I haven't really watched. I kind of stopped watching a ton of them. I felt like a lot of the people blamed Aisha Tyler for it not being good, but I don't think it was her fault. I think her chemistry with the guys is different. I mean, these guys have been friends for several decades, and they were good friends with Drew before the show, and she's like a new person. So their chemistry is not going to be the same as it is with Drew. But, so it's not her fault. I think she did a really good job hosting it. My problem was that they were bringing too many special guests. Because I remember in the original run, they'd occasionally bring in a special guest, like Richard Simmons. Richard Simmons' episode is like one of the most iconic episodes in the history of Whose Line Is It Anyway? They were making every episode. I mean, maybe, I think they were trying to get in like new viewers, but it was just all about the guest stars and just making them the spectacle of the show and not the performers, which I didn't like. And then I felt like they were, I mean, there's like there's like games that are staples of Whose Line Is It Anyway? So I wasn't mad that they were doing the same skits over and over, but I felt there could be more variety. And then I felt like the producers were giving like the same suggestions for everything. And my favorite in the show is Ryan Stiles. I used to have a huge crush on him. I didn't even really think he was attractive. I think it was just because he was funny. And he was my OG Second City crush. Although we now know he has been replaced by another Second City crush. But look how cute he is. Oh my god. I'm so annoying. And I mean, there's not really like scenes. I mean, I guess there's scenes. And then when I think of my favorite scene, it's kind of hard because they're skits. But my favorite moment of the show that I can think of is it was one of the Party Quirks episodes. I don't remember like what episode or what season it was, but it was when Ryan Stiles was Carol Channing, who keeps getting her head stuck to things. And so he's just like putting his head on the floor or putting his head on other people. So he moves his head and he puts it against Drew's desk. And Drew has like this neon light on his desk and he smashes it with his head and breaks it, and there's glass in his hair, and he's like asking if he's bleeding, and he's still in character, and it's one of the best moments in television history, and I love it so much. I've also met Colin and Brad before, so that's a good story. So for number 8, I feel like people are going to be mad that this is not higher, but whatever. Once the show actually ends, I feel like it could be higher, maybe up with its originator. That is Better Call Saul. But I like that the show takes characters that we already knew from the Breaking Bad universe and kind of introduces us to more things about them, like everything about Jimmy and Saul. Like we don't know we barely knew anything about his backstory in Breaking Bad. And, you know, they introduce us to new characters that we love, like Kim and Nacho and Lalo. Do we really love Lalo though? He's kind of terrifying. It's such a great show, and I love Michael McKean and Bob Odenkirk's rivalry as Chuck and Jimmy. I also like that they can put characters that we know survive into Breaking Bad into these really high stakes situations and still make us worried about them. Like the whole Bagman episode, you're so worried about Jimmy and Mike, but we know that they live on to Breaking Bad. And I think that shows how good of writers they are, that we can still worry about these characters in these situations and still make it really high stakes and feel like that, even though we know their fate. Favorite character is Jimmy / Saul, and then I think my favorite scene is when Jimmy and Chuck sing ABBA at karaoke. That scene makes me cry. I don't know, but I love that scene. Next, number 7 is Psych. I love the show so much. I would die for the show. I would die for every single last character on the show. Back several years ago when the show was still running, it was by far my number 1 favorite TV show of all time. I love these characters. I love Sean. Sean could easily be the most awful character ever because he's just so freaking obnoxious, but James Rodriguez makes him so likable. And then his friendship with Gus and Dule Hill's performance, their chemistry makes the show. And then Juliet and Lassie, I love all these characters so much. And the show is just so funny, but it has so much heart to it. I love all the movie references. I love Sean's love for 80s movies. It's kind of like Stranger Things in that way, almost a little bit, where they do a ton of movie references, and it's like so self-aware. I would love to do like a whole video on Psych, because I love the show, and it's such a comfort show for me. And I love that it has such a cult following, because I feel like it didn't get the attention it deserved when it was on air. And there has been 3 Psych movies by now, and all of them were so good. Like, I feel like this was a kind of show where it could end and, you know, it wasn't gonna like ruin the show if it picked up. The movies were just as good as all the episodes, and I love how they build on these characters and other things we know about them. Like, Gus finally falls in love and he has a baby. Spoilers. Sean and Juliet. I love Sean and Juliet's relationship. They're one of my favorite couples like ever. My favorite character is Sean, even though he can be really annoying, but it's okay, we love Sean. And then my favorite, I don't know what my favorite scene exactly is, but I know my favorite episode is Mr. Yin Presents, and Mr. Yin puts everybody in like these Alfred Hitchcock themed death traps. It's such a cool episode. And on my next number 6 spot, my mom's probably going to be mad that this is not higher on the list, because this is like her favorite show ever. It is The Twilight Zone. This is like above and beyond one of the most iconic shows in the history of forever. Like, this show is still being referenced and taken examples of in so many pop culture things to this day. This show, it's honestly crazy watching a lot of the episodes and seeing how well they aged. Rod Serling was such a genius. As some of you might know, I don't remember if I mentioned this in my intro video, but I have my degree in English. And so for one of my classes, I had to take like a gazillion writing, storytelling, English, you know, whatever. It was my major. So I took like a gazillion English classes. But one of the classes was short stories. We actually watched The Twilight Zone in a bunch of classes because he was like, this is the best example for how to tell a short story, is The Twilight Zone. It's actually kind of scary how accurate some of these predicted the future. And I think the one that I always think of is number 12 Looks Like You. Go watch that episode if you have not. Go watch The Twilight Zone if you have not. I feel like there's an episode that has something for everybody. There's episodes that are like about morality, or there's some that are about like social issues, some that are just scary for the sake of being scary. There's some that are silly for the sake of being silly, and it's just so wonderful. I think the only person that doesn't like The Twilight Zone is Ray Bradbury, but that's a story for another day. I would actually love to do like an entire series on The Twilight Zone and watching the episodes and like kind of talking about them and breaking them down kind of thing, because I love talking about The Twilight Zone. My favorite episode, I feel like this is another thing where I can't really pick a favorite scene, but I can pick a favorite episode. My favorite episode will always be Time Enough at Last, and my favorite character ever on The Twilight Zone is Burgess Meredith's character from that episode, Mr. Bemis. Okay, number 5, this will show my bias, but whatever. So I selected Saturday Night Live, but seasons 1 to 4 for number 5, and I think you know why. Hello. I also have a B. I also have a John Belushi. So like right when I got into John Belushi, I watched his and Dan Aykroyd's best of compilations, but I really wanted to watch all their skits, and there wasn't a lot on YouTube. Finally, Peacock put all the Saturday Night Live episodes on Peacock. John Adam Belushi, the love of my life, and Dan Aykroyd, and Gilda Radner, and Lorraine Newman, Bill Murray, Garrett Morris, you know, all those cool people, and seeing how the show started, and there's so many good skits. I mean, Samurai Futaba is my favorite skit, and the Olympia Diner, and the Wild and Crazy Guys, and also Gilda Radner as Lisa Loopner. I mean, when I had always heard like Gilda Radner was like this like super iconic, hilarious, amazing comedian, and I just never watched any of her stuff. Like, I remember my mom talking about her when I was little, and watching this, I was like, okay, I finally get why everybody's obsessed with Gilda Radner, because now I am too. I mean, I watch like an episode a night. It's like, it kind of winds me down. It's just very just means a lot to me. And watching John in his element and seeing how talented he was. I'm literally staring at my picture of him right now. I should show you guys this picture because, okay, I'm just gonna turn my camera around really quick. God. Oh my god, look at him. That's my Slimer. I don't know what else you can see on my wall. Obviously, my favorite cast member is John Belushi. Of course. But Jane Aykroyd and Gilda Renner come in a close second. And then my favorite skit, like I said, I'm gonna move my camera a little bit, is probably John Samurai skit and also Olympia Diner. Those are my favorite recurring sketches. I think my favorite, like, one-off sketch ever is the cold open. You can actually find this on YouTube. It's called Belushi's Demands. It's when John does the cold open. He says live from New York for like the first time by himself, and he holds the show open and holds it hostage. And you should go check that out because I feel like that shows just how great he is. It's one of his best. Number 4. What am I singing? I don't know. My number 4 slot, these next 4, I feel like really anything could go either way, but for my 4th slot, I decided to go with Mr. Robot. The show got a lot of attention when it first came out, and Rami Malek won an Emmy, but then it kind of stopped getting a lot of attention, and I don't know why it didn't, because this show is just perfect in every way, and I love the show. I started watching this because I'm a huge Queen fan. Queen's like my favorite band for like all eternity, since like forever, and I'm like lifelong obsessed with Freddie Mercury. So when Rami Malek got cast as Freddie, I'm like, I need to check this guy out. So I started watching Mr. Robot, and I wasn't really knowing what to expect, and I got hooked, binged the first 3 seasons, and then season 4 came out a few months later, so I got to watch that in real time. With the cast is perfect. I love the storytelling. End episode, the finale was so good, and I feel like it was, I thought I was going to be disappointed by the finale, because I'm like, it's really hard to set off a show that has like all this crazy twist, but it just did it so perfectly. It's one of those shows where once you see the entire thing and go back to watch it, there's like so many different meanings that you didn't pick up on. I feel like it's one of those shows that just like begs to be rewatched and rewatched, so you pick up more things. One of my other favorite parts of the show is Darlene and Elliot's brother-sister relationship. I love them together as siblings. This is not like some Godfather 3 crap, so get that out of your head. So the big plot twist in season 1, like I said, this review is not spoiler free. So when I first went into season 1, I knew that the twist was that Mr. Robot was in Elliot's head and was kind of like a Fight Club situation and was his other personality, but I didn't know that it was his dad. And then as the show goes on, you find out so much more about his complicated relationship with his dad. I cannot pick my favorite scene because it's all so good. First one I think of is when the guy from like Wall Street Burns Some Money and Take Me Home by Phil Collins is playing, because I feel like that was the moment where I was like, okay, this is like an all-time top very favorite show ever. Favorite characters are definitely Elliot and Darlene, tied. Both Rami Malek and Carly Chaikin's performances were so good. They're like 2 of my favorite characters ever, period. Like probably top 10 favorite characters. And my number 3 is Boardwalk Empire. I can't remember when the show came out, but I feel like the show was like made for me. I love that whole old school 1920s like boardwalk aesthetic. I love the aesthetic of the show, like the whole 1920s, and then of course it's about mafia, and I love anything related to mafia history. That's like a big hyperfixation of mine. So the show was like made for me, and I love how it kind of blends realistic with fiction, and I think they did a really good job of that. And all the cast is great. Steve Buscemi as Nucky Thompson, you know, he's the lead. It's Steve Buscemi, he's so great. And then Vincent Piazza as Charlie Luciano, and Stephen Graham as Al Capone, and also Bobby Cannavale as Chip Rossetti. One of my favorite performances ever. I mean, he beat Aaron Paul for the Emmy for that. I feel like it would have been higher on my list, but I feel like season 4 and a little bit of season 5, the writing kind of fell off a little bit, and I feel like the show could have been a little bit better writing wise, and there was just some plots that just felt so unnecessary. and it felt a little different from the earlier seasons, but I think it picked back up that later on in season 5. And my favorite scene, I feel like there's one with Gyp Rosetti. I can't remember. My favorite character, though, is Vincent Piazza as Charlie Luciano, because Charlie Luciano is the real-life mafia boss who fascinates me the most. So he was my favorite. And my number 2 pick, I'm probably going to get judged for this, but I don't really care because I've liked this show for so long, and it means so much to me that I don't really care if people don't like it. And my number 2 pick is The Nanny. I feel like there's so many, like, 90s sitcoms that are super popular still, and a lot of the younger generations are discovering them, like, obviously, Friends, Seinfeld, you know, Fresh Prince, stuff like that, Full House, but I've liked The Nanny for so long, and I probably rewatched it, like, at least 100 times. I'm not joking, because it was on Nick at Night. It used to be on Nick at Night, like, every night, so I would just watch it at night all the time for, like, years and years and years every night, and so I've seen it, like, a billion times, and I can, like, recite every episode, and I love the show. I think that Daniel Davis as Niles, and Renee Taylor as Sylvia, and Anne Morgan Gilbert as Yetta are some of the funniest comedic performances I've ever seen in my life. I love Fran and Maxwell's will they won't they relationship. I think theirs isn't really like a traditional will they won't they, it's more like when will they. And then Niles and Cece, their rivalry, and I love how they ended up getting together, and I like that they hinted at it all throughout the series, but then they waited till Max and Fran were finally together to actually have them get together. Fran's like one of my biggest idols, and she is like my hair and makeup inspiration, and also my fashion a little bit. She's the reason that I like thigh-high boots. You haven't seen me in thigh-high boots, unless maybe you know me IRL. You've probably seen me wear them before, but I love me a good pair of thigh-high boots, and red lipstick, and dramatic eyes, and all that good stuff, thanks to Fran. So I obviously have really curly, like, frizzy hair, and I was always very self-conscious of it, because people made fun of me for it when I was younger for whatever reason, because kids are jerks, and I always hated having curly hair, and I was like, oh my god. But then I watched The Nanny, and Fran's confidence, and her talking about her big hair, and being proud of it, that, like, really restored my confidence and my love for having curly hair. I'd like just washed it, so it's a little flatter today. I love Fran, and I love her confidence, and I love the whole thing that people make fun of Fran, but she just doesn't, but she's confident in herself, and, you know, she insults herself too, and I'm not a very confident person. I've never talked about this, but I have very bad self-esteem issues, and I feel like Fran's kind of one of my biggest idols for, you know, no matter what people say, like, be confident in yourself. People make fun of the way she dressed or her voice, and, you know, she owned it, and I love that about her, and I love that about Fran Fine. Fran Fine's probably my favorite female character of all time, and yeah, I just love that she owns who she is. And also another cool thing is that one of Fran's best friends ever is Dan Aykroyd, and he guest stars on a season 1 episode, and so I loved this show for, like, years and years and years. Like, I watched it before I got into the Blues Brothers or Dan or John or whatever. So once I got into them and I found out that how close Dan and Fran were, knowing she, like, has a connection to, like, the Blues Brothers and John and Dan, I don't think she ever would have met John, because I think her and Dan met on set of Dr. Detroit, but that just, like, was so cool that, like, one of my biggest idols for as long as I can remember is also friends with, like, my adulthood idols. And I love that, and, like, everybody from the Blues Brothers was on the show. Like, Dan, obviously, and then Twiggy. Twiggy played Mr. Sheffield's sister in season 1, and she was also kind of the reason the show happened, because Fran was kind of trying to come up with the show, and she went to go babysit Twiggy's kids, and she was like, hey, what if we do kind of like a Sound of Music, like, kind of like a modern spin on the Sound of Music? And then also Ray Charles was in some of the later seasons. He was Yetta's fiance, then husband. What's his name? The guy who plays Maurice Sline. I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head, the actor. But he plays Fran's dad in the last season. So I just love that there's a connection with this and my favorite movie, and John Belushi. And John's wife posted a picture with Fran on Twitter, and I was like, oh my god. My universes are colliding. And I don't know what my favorite scene is. I like all the Niles and Cece rivalries. I feel like I can never remember my favorite episode or scene, but then when it comes on, I do remember it, and I don't remember it right now. But my favorite characters, it's a tie between Fran and Niles and Yetta and Sylvia. And finally, my number one favorite show of all time, dude, Breaking Bad. I feel like this is like half the world's favorite show of all time. So I was kind of late to the Breaking Bad party because when it first came out in 2008, I think I was definitely probably too young to watch it or appreciate it. And I never really heard a ton about it until like the show was ending, because I remember one of my English classes, we were reading Ozymandias, which is the poem Percy Bysshe Shelley. Reading that for one of my English classes. A guy in my class was like, oh, they just released a teaser for the last few episodes of Breaking Bad, and Bryan Cranston reads the poem, so we listened to that in class, and that was like kind of the first thing I thought of Breaking Bad. And I think I tried to watch it, and then it made me kind of depressed, and then I kind of gave up. And I don't know, I never like was like, oh, I'm gonna watch Breaking Bad for like a really long time. And then quarantine happened, and the new season of Westworld came out, and Aaron Paul's in that season, and I was like, oh my god, he's really great, I should watch Breaking Bad, because everybody says he's even greater in Breaking Bad. So I watched Breaking Bad, and I binged it in like a week or something, and I was like, this show's not going to be as good as people say it is. Like, it's not. I was kind of skeptical that it was going to be that good, and I'm so glad I was proven wrong, because it is that good. I remember watching the I remember watching the series finale and just being like, oh my god, I get it now. I get why people are so obsessed with this. Like, what hasn't been said about Breaking Bad? I feel the acting, the characters, the character development, the editing. I love the editing. Every time my mom watches it, she's like, the editing, oh my god, this scene's edited so well. And just the build up. I like how certain plots play out, and there's like all these different elements, and all these little storylines connect, like the plane crash that links back to Jesse, which was kind of Walt's fault, and like watching the lead up to Gus's death and Hector's death was really cool. The finale, watching Jesse choke out Todd was one of the most satisfying moments in TV, because Todd is literally one of my least favorite characters ever. And I like how the show also has like kind of like a weird like dark humor to it, and I think it really adds to the show and makes it even better. And just everybody on the show is so great. And I remember, yeah, I watched Felina, and I already was obsessed, and I knew it was like the greatest by that point. But watching the finale, and when they play Baby Blue and he just falls over, I'm like, oh my god, I get it, okay. This is why Breaking Bad is Breaking Bad. And I was afraid I was actually going to be disappointed, because I remember hearing that I knew like a lot of spoilers for the show before I watched it, and I thought I was going to be disappointed, because I remember just hearing that, well, like, Walt just got shot, and I'm like, that sounds kind of lame. But, you know, obviously it was not lame. It was so, that ending with the machine gun that he rigged was like the coolest. One of my favorite things, I remember, like I said, I knew like a ton of spoilers, but the one thing I didn't know about was Gus's death. When that happened, I have never reacted to a TV show like that in my entire life. Just like, oh my god. And when he comes out and his face, I think I was watching it at like 3 a.m. and like everybody was sleeping, and I did try not to scream, because I have never been that like, holy crap, watching anything in my entire life. Also cannot imagine what it was like watching the show in real time and having to wait weeks or months or years to find out these things, because I was able to find them out in like a week, and like all within a week of each other. And I'm just like sitting here watching the new season of Better Call Saul, and like if you watched episode 3 of the season, and I'm just sitting here and I'm like, how did people, and I'm just so impatient, and I'm like, what the heck's gonna happen? And I'm like, man, I can't imagine what it was like watching Breaking Bad, or even the earlier seasons of Better Call Saul in real time, because this season of Better Call Saul is actually the first time I get to watch something from the Breaking Bad universe in real time. And oh, favorite scene. That's really hard because every scene is just so good. There's so many good scenes. Like I said, Gus's death was really exciting for me because I knew nothing about that coming. That was like the one spoiler I didn't know. I love, I am the one who knocks. Just the ending scene with Baby Blue. Oh, Jesse driving away. Oh, Jesse's like my son. Hank finding out, and then when Walt says like the tread lightly line, and then the crawl space. Oh my god, that scene is so. That scene just like shows why the show is so good. Like Walt laying there like cackling, and then Skylar panicking on the phone, and then they like zoom away and zoom away and zoom away, and oh my god, this show's perfect. There's just too many good scenes. I can't pick a very favorite scene. Favorite character, Jesse. I know everybody loves Jesse. Who doesn't love Jesse? And also Saul, because he's Saul Goodman. It's my favorite show ever. So now you know my top 10 or kind of 11 favorite shows of all time. And there's a lot of other shows I like. So just let me know what other shows. Let me know if you want to know what other shows I like. Let me know in the comments what your favorite TV shows are, or any you'd suggest to me. Or I like a lot of shows. So like I said, we might I don't know. Yeah, let me know your favorite shows ever in the comments. Or if you like these shows, or who your favorite characters are. Anything like that. So, I think that's it for the day. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking really fast, but also, I feel like my cat just came in. I also feel like in my top 10 favorite movies video, I was like dragging. I was like, oh, Jake, Blues, blah, blah, blah. So, I'd rather talk really fast than be boring. So that is it for the day, and make sure to like and comment and subscribe and all that good stuff, and let me know what else you'd like to talk about. I like talking about top 10 things. I would like to do more top 10s. Of course, little Jake and I say bye!